Well, we made a point of sitting in the back. It's just become a tradition after the last couple of months, so here we are. All right. First stop of the day. Caesarea Maritima. Again, a lot of these places we've been to before, but I've not gotten this on film before, so here we go. It's a little confusing because we're coming through in two different buses, so we're not entirely sure if we're staying together as a single group or as two different ones, but we'll get the hang of this at some point. So this is our first stop, Caesarea Maritima, a fairly obscure sounding place, but also rather important in the scriptures. This is the very amphitheater where Herod Agrippa was lauded as having the voice of a god rather than a man, and promptly falling over and being eaten by worms. Yeah, hygiene and cuisine back in those days was suspect, but it's used by God one way or another. This place was built by Herod the Great back in the 1st century before Christ, and was rebuilt again in the Byzantine era after Constantine. But it's been destroyed several times before and was only resurrected, so to speak, within the last century as Israel became to be a thing. And when they're starting to build housing here, they keep discovering ancient ruins, but those become treasured items to be preserved, just to show the authenticity of Scripture. Behind us are the ruins of where Herod the Great put his palace. And it's not just on the sea, but actually in it. This is basically built up so that he could put his palace there. The pillars we see here are the ruins that surrounded what might have been his garden. And there are a few other things in this palace, which later became the governor's mansion, so to speak, where Pontius Pilate lived. Now understand, this is merely a replica, but the original was found being used for part of the theater wall at one point during the Byzantine Empire, and it does acknowledge that Pontius Pilate had set up his home here on orders of the Caesar Tiberius up until its discovery barely a century ago. There was no archaeological evidence towards Pontius Pilate's existence, and people started to doubt that he was a real individual. But the more people dig, the more people find, including something like this. Down below here is a cellar, a dungeon, and it is expected that this is where Paul was kept for those 2 years by Felix and Festus before he appealed to Caesar, as a Roman citizen could, in order to have his trial heard in Rome rather than here in Caesarea. There's a reason he preferred to have it take place in Rome. Not only was he called to spread the gospel there, but also because he wouldn't be able to get a fair trial here in Judea. And there were others waiting to kill him along the way between here and Jerusalem. It doesn't look like much at this point, but it is a large plate of land here that Herod the Great set up here. And this is all man-made back here. Our guide Yael points out that by the swimming pool, and that was what the big square with the water in it is, full of fresh water, I might add. The king gets what the king wants. But one of the things that the king insisted, since he considered himself a Jew, despite being a great lover of Roman culture, is that the mosaics he had on the floor were only of geometric designs, no human forms, so as to not violate the second commandment of no graven images before me. I'll give him credit that even behind closed doors, he at least tried to follow some of the commandments. Of course, that seems like a gnat being strained out while he ate camels for breakfast. Sorry, I have to stop here for a moment. Yael says she's taking the group for a bathroom break, and right behind us are the old bathrooms outside of the amphitheater. I think we still have a picture of you sitting on one of these, honey. Might as well point it out before it gets behind us.